What? Human excrement? As soon as Quentin heard this, he immediately started dry heaving next to Dustin. But since the poison was already in his stomach, he couldn't spit it out even if he wanted to. His face flushed red instead. Before this, the phrase eat shit had only been a suggestion, but he couldn't believe that it had actually happened to him. I didn't expect Dustin to be so heartless by forcing our cousin to eat shit. How is he going to eat anything else from now on? Ruth commented as she covered her nose with her hands. She then started to move away from them with a look of disgust. For all the shit he spews out from his mouth, I think this is a most fitting punishment. Natasha couldn't help but add fuel to the fire too. How dare you trick me, you little bastard? Quentin roared as he raised his head. His expression darkened and his gaze was murderous. He had never been humiliated this badly in all his life. Since we were tasked with making poison, I had the freedom to choose my own recipe, so I was allowed to add any ingredient I saw fit inside, no? Dustin stated matter-of-factly. Good, good. You've got some nerve, don't you? Quentin shouted, his face contorted with anger. I can't wait to see you begging at my feet later once the poison kicks into your system. We'll certainly see who will be the one who gets down on their knees later. Now, you'd better ask the people around you whether they can cure the poison I made or not. Dustin grinned. Give me the antidote now, Mr. Wangley. Quentin urged. He certainly didn't want his high-class body to suffer any more damage. Calm down, Mr. Harmon. Let me take a look at you first. Mr. Wangley picked up the bottle with the rest of the poison and brought it close to his nose to smell it. Then, he dipped his finger into the remaining liquid and placed a drop on the tip of his tongue to taste it. Here I was beginning to think it was some kind of potent poison. Who would have guessed that it was Venenum insectum all along? Mr. Wangley chuckled. It seemed he had found his answer. Venenum insectum? What's that? Quentin asked. Venenum insectum is a poison that's made from 7 types of venomous organisms. They're first ground into a fine powder, then mixed together. If I'm not mistaken, the organisms in question are snakes, scorpions, toads, centipedes, spiders, poisonous bees, and fire ants, Mr. Wangley explained with confidence. Are you for real? You got all that from tasting one small droplet? Ruth asked incredulously. If he had the skills to figure out Dustin's recipe like that, that would mean that he was pretty much an expert as well. As expected of a poison master, you clearly are an expert in your field, Dustin remarked with a smile. He had to admit that Mr. Wangley was indeed talented, but it was a shame that he was so close yet so far once again, mistaking his concoction for Venenum insectum instead of Venenum insectum. The golden juice was merely added in for extra flavor. Will you stop spewing nonsense to yourself already, Mr. Wangley? Hurry up and make me an antidote. My stomach is starting to hurt again. Quentin whined as he clutched his abdomen with a strained look. His stomach had begun to churn again 2 minutes later. Wait for me while I whip up an antidote for you, Mr. Harmon. Mr. Wangley swiftly started preparing an antidote with the ingredients that remained. Hurry up! It's getting more and more painful by the second. Quentin howled in pain. The longer time went on, he felt as if there was a knife inside his abdomen that kept stabbing his insides. He started to break out in a cold sweat. In the meantime, Dustin looked absolutely fine and showed no abnormal symptoms, so much so that he managed to sip his tea leisurely. How are you not affected? Quentin stuttered, visibly taken aback. Dustin had drunk the poison first, so why was it that he seemed like he wasn't affected by it in the slightest? I've already gotten rid of the poison in my system. So, how could I still be affected? You've already concocted an antidote? But how? You didn't do anything. Quentin spat in disbelief. That's not for you to worry about. Why don't you focus on your case first? Like what you're going to do if the person standing next to you can't cure the poison, Dustin suggested with mock concern. The poison I conjured up was a rough one, by the way. It'll induce searing pain first, and if you fail to obtain the antidote within 3 hours, then it'll tear through your guts and intestines and cause you to die a horrible death. What? Quentin gasped and panicked. His stomach was already hurting badly before this, but after receiving a scare from Dustin, it seemed to hurt even more. I've got the antidote for you, Mr. Hardhan. Mr. Wangley announced as he brought a vial of white liquid over to him in the nick of time. Without any hesitation, Quentin downed the whole thing in one gulp. As soon as the antidote landed in his stomach, he immediately felt better. However, after enduring the pain for a few seconds, he vomited all the white liquid out of his system. What are you doing, Mr. Harmon? You just threw up the antidote. Mr. Wangley exclaimed in surprise. I couldn't help it. I really couldn't hold it in. Quentin whined helplessly. You could even stomach eating shit, so why can't you do the same for the antidote? Mr. Wangley scolded, flabbergasted. Cut the crap! Hurry up and prepare another dose, I'll make sure to hold it in this time round, Quentin shouted as his face twitched. Mr. Wangley had no choice but to do as he was told. Soon, he'd finished whipping up another dose, and Quentin wasted no time ingesting it. This time, he managed to hold it in. My stomach still hurts like hell, Mr. Wangley. Why haven't the effects kicked in yet? Quentin complained with a strained look on his face. It can't be. The main ingredients to make an antidote for Venenum insectum are forsythia, lotus root, and white creepers. Then, it just needs to be supplemented with a few herbs and heated up to be able to detoxify the poison. Perhaps the effects of the antidote haven't kicked in yet, so I'll need you to wait a little while longer, Mr. Wangley comforted. Quentin nodded and forced himself to endure the severe pain for a few more minutes. His face even started contorting to reflect the indescribable pain he was feeling as time went on. Mr. Wangley, I don't think this was the right antidote. Not only did it do nothing to ease the pain, but it also hurts even more now. Quentin shouted through gritted teeth and continued to be drenched in sweat. How could this be? Mr. Wangley stepped forward to check Quentin's pulse. Don't tell me this isn't Venenum insectum? Mr. Wangley exclaimed. Huh? Then what about the antidote that you gave me just now? Quentin roared in anger. What else did you put in your poison, you bastard? I clearly saw you had venomous creepy crawlies inside. Mr. Wangley turned around and questioned. The kind of ingredients I used isn't the main focus here. The real question should be whether you can get rid of the poison or not, Dustin said indifferently. You played dirty, didn't you? So be it. Even if this ends up in a tie, as long as you hand me the antidote. I'll give you the antidote for the devil's elixir. Mr. Wangley proposed as he made the decision to be the bigger person. If he'd concocted the poison using a different recipe, then he would need to take the time to analyze it properly. But now that Quentin was writhing in pain, he didn't have the luxury to take his time. It would be bad for him too if his source of income were to disappear just like that. You want the antidote, don't you? Fine. A cocky grin spread on Dustin's face. According to what said to me earlier, I want the same back from you. I want you to kneel you down before me and admit defeat. After that, I'll give you the antidote. The second he finished his sentence, Quentin and Mr. Wangley's expressions changed.